pause, so I have to start. Okay, I'm back now. Had to disappear. If you heard that tapping in the background, the husband was being a bit noisy.
So somebody was clearly focusing more on things than person.
I think that was the case. So I should be thanking my husband for that prompt and reminder that it is possible to focus on the things. So this particular meta program is where the focus for organising one's thought patterns go. So again, if you were talking to someone and asking them to retell a tale of what they've been doing, the storyline, the way they talk, will really be expressing what was happening with the people, what's happening with the person, what was happening with themselves. That's the way they'd be telling that story. For other people, it may appear like a bit more objective. It's about the project, about the activities, what was achieved, what were the outcomes. So again, you can see this very different focus in people, which is useful to be aware of, because again, if you're wanting to build the relationships, you're wanting to understand where they're coming from, so perhaps you can match that too.
And what's interesting is that if somebody is very much on that person side of things, that often they can perceive, you know, if you're their manager, let's say, you can see the person then as becoming the task, the activity.
Yeah, so almost treat that person as a commodity.
Yeah. Okay, and then the final one is very, very different, really, and incredibly important. And this is one of those things that when you know it, and if you begin to spot this pattern in other people, you can really utilize this well in terms of influencing, inspiring, leading. So this is about how do people become convinced of something. Now, the first part is quite straightforward, and we call it convince a channel. So, you know, people can become convinced of something. They have to see it. Yeah, they have to actually see it with their own eyes before they become convinced of something, before it becomes a belief of theirs. Other people have to hear it. So, you know, that might be about feedback. They have to hear somebody tell them something. Third one is, you know, they have to read it. They have to get facts and, you know, they have to see it in print or on the screen in some way. And the fourth one is they have to have an experience of doing it themselves. So the more active side. So that's the first part. The second part is where it gets really interesting, and this is about what we call a convincer mode. So let's take it just in the order that it's appearing on screen here. So the first one is people are convinced automatically, in other words, the first time. So you know, they may see evidence of something for the first time and are convinced. They may do something themselves for the first time and are therefore convinced that they can do it again. They have that skill. So that's automatic. The other one is a number of times. So, you know, they have to read something or hear something or do something twice, 3 times, 4 times. And the most common example of this is what we call a 3-time convincer. So if you only take away one thing from this bit, remember the 3 times convincer, because that's a pattern that is common in a lot of people. So, and this is why some of you will be aware of this kind of rule of telling people 3 times, you know, in presentations, present the same thing in 3 different ways, tell them at the start, tell them in the middle, tell them at the end. That's all to do with this idea of a 3-time convincer. Other examples would be, you know, people buying a house, for example, might need to go along and see it 3 times. I'm sure you can think of your own examples there.
And even when you're learning a new skill yourself, it's probably a good example, isn't it? That yeah. Perhaps you need to make 3 presentations or apply a new skill on 3 occasions.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, the next one is a period of time. So before somebody becomes convinced of something, it just takes a period of time, a length of time. It may be 3 days, it may be 3 weeks, maybe 3 months, maybe years before that happens. And yeah, so an aspect of that would be that some people just need to, and it might be they would language it as, you know, I need to sit on something, I need to let it settle a while for a period of time.
Or sleep on it, people say sometimes, don't they?
Yeah.
People just sleep on it.
Yeah, good. And also after, sometimes it may be after about 4 or 5 days, they've not proactively done anything in that time, but it's just been kind of fermenting in the background. And then, you know, they wake up on the 4th day or the 5th day or whatever, and it's like, okay, you know, I've decided, I'm now convinced that this is right and this is the way forward. There are some little techniques that we can share, but we'll maybe save that for another time. And then the final one is some people find this a little bit confusing in terms of the title. It's called consistent. What that means is that they're never completely convinced. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm sure you know people like that who it seems as though you have to evidence it every time that you can do something, let's say, because they're never absolutely sure that something has changed. Mm. So I guess they are consistent in their not being convinced. I guess that's what that one's about.
Well, they somehow just go back to neutral, because sometimes, like when you're pitching for work and perhaps you've worked with someone before, or some of your suppliers and the relationship, you think, oh, we've got this history. Sometimes you have to start from scratch again and remind people of all the things that you think they might just remember or take from experience. So it's worth remembering that some people need to start from scratch each time in your relationships.
Yeah, and of course we can be really surprised by that. So this is again a map of the world thing, that depending on where you are, if somebody else is at the opposite extreme, you can be incredibly surprised by that and really can't understand where they're coming from. So this is why we share with you these patterns, so that you are forewarned and forearmed, as it were, and not surprised. And then you can begin to spot these patterns and adjust your style of communication accordingly. I think that was the final one, really, wasn't it?
Yes, so that's excellent. So I trust that was a good taster into these, and that you're curious to find out and consider and reflect on where you are on that scale, where we suggested there's a right and a left. Where would you put the little tick to say where you're at, and notice where those people, particularly people you want these strong relationships with, or you want to influence or work with well, to understand them. So we'll pick up on that with you again later. So bye-bye for now.
Okay, bye.